Welcome to the Referrals Podcast, the show designed to help everyone from the solopreneur to the Fortune 500 company win the referral game. If you want to build a company with an army of ambassadors and raving fans who speak highly of you and refer you willingly, you are in the right place. And now, here is your host, Michael J. Maher.
Hey, everybody, this is Michael J. Maher again with the Referrals Podcast. We are here to rock and roll today. I will tell you what, we've always talked about the new ABC. The old ABC was A, always B, B, C, closing. And there's a new ABC in town, right? That's the old ego era stuff. There is new and improved approach to human beings, believe it or not. Walking around closing people is not the way to conduct business. The way to conduct business is the new ABC, which is A, always be B, C, connecting. Always be connecting people. Always be connecting people to each other. Always be looking to be connected, introduced, and referred to others. Always looking for the opportunity to grow your network. It's so easy with social media. It's so easy to reach people. It's so easy to connect people in today's world. Today, we're going to talk about leadership and being high impact and recruiting. We're going to talk about how do you grow your team with talent. And I will tell you that there is a subset of A, always B, B, C connecting. And that is ABR, which is always be recruiting. You should always be recruiting. You should always be building your bench. You should always be building your bench. You never know when you're going to need someone. And I guess that just means we're going to have to be kind to everyone. What a concept. No burning bridges. Nope. You've heard of burning the boats. Don't be burning the bridges. And I will tell you that today's guest is going to take us a long way down the road of how to attract talent to our lives. How do we attract high level talent to our business and to our lives? Now, I will tell you, I've known our guest for quite a few years, and this is my recruiting guy, right? This is my guy who knows how to get things done when it comes to introducing people to you, the discovery process, attracting talent, keeping talent. Wouldn't it be great to be able to keep talent? There's an old adage. It's like, well, what if I train people and they leave? And the flip side of that is, oh my gosh, what if you don't train them and they stay? Which is worse? Train them anyway. I'm just saying, because if you train them, you love on them, they'll stay. And here's the other thing. You train on them, you love on them, they leave, they come back. That's what we have seen over and over again. Listen, Pat Mancuso says, the purpose of business is to fund your perfect life. And the purpose of life is to truly live before you die. That saying has guided both the professional and personal life of Pat Mancuso. Entrepreneurship is something that is ingrained inside of Pat, as he has started and grown many companies from the ground up. As a CEO, he has never succeeded alone and truly enjoys watching and helping others grow. Pat believes every highly successful person accomplishes their success with the help of great mentors, coaches, and consultants. His consulting group was created for that reason. With over 30 years of entrepreneurial experience, Pat helps companies solve their most critical issues, which are most often people issues. Pat, welcome to Referrals Podcast. We are so happy and glad to have you today.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for having me. And I'm just truly blessed to have the opportunity to share with you and your listeners all the great stuff we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I love your approach, because your approach is like the human approach to leadership. You know, it's like there's all these what you might call artistic or scientific ways to be leaders. And I mean, you know, you go back to the Jack Mitchell days where he was talking about you always got to be firing 10%. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, it's like, okay, I'm not sure how human that is. It's kind of a dog eat dog world. And I love the fact that you really come from the avenue of love, generosity, and appreciation with your people. Love on them and be that kind leader. And guess what? They'll perform for you, you know, because they want to, not because they're fearful or have to. So, you know, what do people struggle with the most when it comes from your perspective?
Well, you know, it's a great question, Michael. And I think, you know, first, what do leaders struggle with the most? They struggle with growing their skill level and understanding that none of us were blessed as leaders. The leaders aren't born, they're grown. And what happens if we're not aware of that is we're impacting so many lives. We're working on a book, and the premise of that book is leadership is not a light switch you can turn on and off when it's convenient. And so you don't get to flip the switch off as a leader. And far too often leaders do that, and they're thinking about themselves when frankly they should be thinking about their people. And so growing your skills as a leader is so critical, and even more so critical in today's world. And we just see a lot of people who fail there because either maybe ego, they're not willing to continue to grow and learn. And, it's been said many times, people don't leave a company, they leave the leader. And, if we just stop and ponder on that for a second about the massive investment companies make in people, and then they leave the leader, they don't typically leave the company.
Yeah. That's a amazing statement. I've heard like different reasons, like people think they leave for money, but most of the time they're like leaving for growth, or they're leaving for a challenge, or they're leaving because of the leader. And they might even say they're leaving for the money, but they're really not.
Yeah,
it's like
they don't typically, I'm sorry, Michael.
Yeah, go ahead.
They don't typically leave over money. That's what they say because that's an easier and a more comfortable conversation. When you truly step back and you talk with people at the point that they're ready to leave, what you find out is it wasn't about the money. It was about what they could have accomplished that person who employed them or led them never knew. We don't typically go deep enough with the people. We don't get into that relationship as you talk about in your books and your philosophies. We don't know about what makes them tick, what's important for their families, what do they like to do. And so then when it comes down to money, or it comes down to looking at greener pastures, it's pretty easy. And then at that point, it's too late. And again, that's such a skill that needs to be developed by leaders.
Yeah, I love that, because it is about building relationships with your staff, with the people who work with you and work for you and work around you. And, I have to tell you, you do remind me of a book. One of my favorite books is Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. Have you read that?
I so love that book, Michael. Oh my gosh. It's an amazing book. And if people haven't read it, they should go read it, because that is it's a simple and yet impactful concept.
Yeah. And what's interesting in it is that I took some of the questions from Dream Manager that the Dream Manager was asking his staff and applied it to everyone. It is really like being a human as a leader. And I love, generating interest and getting interested in them. And then once again, they become interested in you. And that's the thing is like, there's so much of this life that it takes us first, right? It's Proverbs 11:25. Which just says, he who is generous shall be prosperous. Notice generous comes first, right? It doesn't say once you're prosperous, be generous. But the second sentence is, he who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. And it's like, if you want people to be interested in your goals, go first. Be interested in their goals. To be interesting, be more interested. And that's where those level of questions and that kind of thing come into play. As you ask these questions, you get interested, and they're like, oh, wow, like this person wants to know me more as a human. And all of a sudden they succeed more, or they start to achieve their dreams. And they're like, oh, you know what? The guy who's trying to make me achieve my dreams, or the gal who's trying to achieve my dreams is like, I need to help them achieve their dreams and achieve their goals. And a lot of times that can happen within a week or even a day in some cases. So I love that.
Well, and in that book, they talk about the impact, not just of the one-on-one relationship with the employee and employer. It's well beyond that. And those people don't leave companies. And if you've not read the book, you certainly need to go read it, because it talks about one particular industry in general that has a super high turnover, and how they took that turnover from about 70+% down to less than 10%. And it was because they invested in their people. So yeah, it's all about the people. In fact, if you're not investing in the people, I'm not sure what you're investing in.
Yeah, it's your number one asset. It
Right.
really is, right? I mean, it's how you're going to grow. It's how you're going to fail. It's so on and so forth. And so the other thing too is that, there's three things that you can leverage in business. You can leverage people, you can leverage systems, and you can leverage tools, and technology definitely fits under tools. And it's interesting is that, systems pretty straightforward. It's a checklist on steroids. Tools, pretty straightforward. You know what a hammer does, the different ways you can use it. You can take nails out, you can put nails in, and you can hit stuff with it, right? So the system and tool, but people, right? It's like this people is this nebulous cloud of difference, every single person. And it's the hardest to figure out, wouldn't you say?
Well, it is, and yet it is because we do it many times entrepreneurially. And when you have a system, let's go back to systems, people, and tools. When you have a system that you can leverage for not only hiring, training, and then long-term leading and motivating, it becomes easier. It's not perfect because human beings are imperfect.
Right.
And yet, I truly believe in my exposure and experience in consulting over the years that when you can follow a model that works with people, it's absolutely amazing what's possible.
So I love that. And so we talked about the challenges and the struggles a little bit of leaders. And I want to go back to that a little bit. And then I want to dive into, you just said RSTLM. So I'm going to dive into those things. So it's one of those where what's interesting, and this was a challenge that I had to conquer early on, was that I was great at self-improvement. Like I would go to a conference and I'm taking, 7 pages of notes and I'm ordering it. I'm making a checklist. I'm putting a little box next to it and I'm checking off the free and easy ones. And then the low investment, I'm investing and checking those off, and like super scientific. And then I come back to my team and I'm going, hey, here are some of the things that we're going to do. Blah, right? And they weren't at the conference, so they have no idea what's coming. And it got to the point where, in my first couple of years, they hated for me to go to a conference. They're like, you sure you need to go to this conference? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fired up and everything else. And they're not saying that because they don't want me to go. They don't want me to come back. It's one of those. So, how do we handle that dichotomy between, growing ourselves and growing our people?
Well, first I would offer that if you're not growing your people, they're falling behind. And as much as, we believe and we coach people that we can, coach others in our business, the fact is that if you're at an event and I'm at an event and I'm on your team, not only are we both growing, we're also getting different perspectives, which will allow that growth to actually take off at a higher, more rapid pace. And what you did, honestly, transparently, is what a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs do. They go, they take it, they bring it back, they seagull it, they dump it on their team, and then they run to the next thing. And so that you really want to grow people, Michael, so that they can make the decisions that that they have the potential to make when you're not there. And that's true leverage. If we're always having to make the decisions and they're always having to come to us, that's not true leverage, honestly. And it's not empowering them. It's not making it rewarding for them. And therefore they feel like they hit ceilings, or maybe they're not as much of value. So, you want to bring them to as many events as you can, and then just let them learn and grow. And I guarantee you they'll come back with some amazing ideas that you didn't hear because you didn't hear it from your perception. They heard it from their perception.
Well, that's a huge deal, right? Because
Huge.
it is, especially like in my case, I would be like, hey, listen, I'm writing these handwritten notes and I'm writing 5 a day and I'm seeing huge successes by simply writing a handwritten note. And I'm telling my 4 salespeople, hey, listen, you should write handwritten notes. You should write handwritten notes. And they're not writing handwritten notes. And even with the successes that I share all the time, it's like, well, of course, Michael's getting success from that. But we go to a conference and we're all sitting around the table afterwards, downloading our ideas. And 2 of them turn to each other and go, we had the greatest session today. Oh my gosh, this guy was such a great speaker. He was so fun to listen to. And oh my gosh, he had the greatest idea. His idea was to write handwritten notes to our sphere. And he gave us some ideas on what to write. And and it was just like, oh my God, I'm going to start writing notes. And I'm sitting there like, that is a great idea. So let's talk about that. So luckily I didn't get too egoistical in the moment. I actually saw a way that they were going to improve their business, but it was just like, sometimes they can't hear it from the manager or the leader. They really have to hear it on their own time and in their own way. And it needs to be their idea almost, right?
Well, and here's the other thing, Michael, when you invest in them, that builds that relationship to a much higher level. I'll never forget a story. Is the kind of a classic crazy story. I was doing an event one time and I was going back to the airport and somebody was driving me and I said, why isn't so-and-so at this event? Because I knew so-and-so should have been at the event. And they said, well, they didn't want to invest in that person because they were only within their 90 days, which is some of our internal lingo.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to make sure they made it past the 90 days before they invested in them. I'm thinking, this would be a way to help them make it to the 90 days. And that's just that thinking, it just is sometimes lost.
Yeah, 100%. I will tell you, one of the biggest, fastest, best adjustments I ever had to make was to continue with my self-improvement, but make sure their improvement is my number one goal, because I'm going to improve no matter what. I'm driven that way. I always want to be that way, but I made their growth more important than my growth. And what was interesting is their growth actually accelerated my growth, which sounds so weird. You would think if I just go it alone, if I just go over here and I just study and study and study and immerse myself, then I'm going to grow faster. But I didn't find that. I found by them growing, it actually accelerated my growth. And honestly, if somebody's a solopreneur or doing this on their own, they're probably hampering their growth because they don't have the elements of mastermind. They don't have the element of articulating how they're doing things, which instantly makes us better and grow. And you're also not teaching it. And when you're teaching as well as learning, you actually learn faster, because you're taking accountability and responsibility for the materials. So that was an adjustment I had to make. Is that something you've seen with leaders? Is that, they pour into the growth of their people, maybe even more than they pour into their own growth?
You know what? I wish we would see it more often. Something clicks and then it goes. And yet, in the coaching and consulting that we've done over the years with those CEOs and entrepreneurs, once they get it, we call it the compound effect. Most people think if you grow yourself and then your team member grows yourself, it's a plus. It's not. It's actually a multiplication. And when people actually understand that, they're more willing to invest. And then when they invest, there's got to be an expected return on investment. In other words, don't just go to the event, then come back and do nothing. There's a model for implementation. There's a model for discussion. And when that happens, organizations go crazy. They do, because their people are so excited. They're so energized. And again, I go back to that word empowerment. People want to be a part of something where they can contribute. They don't want to be a part of something where they don't feel like they have a say, where they don't feel like they can contribute or they can impact or bring ideas. People leave that type of organization very quickly.
Yeah, I will tell you, it's amazing how much I've learned from you and how much I've learned from leading a staff, leading a team, leading a company, that I've noticed and been aware of to create my community of army of ambassadors, right? So I always tell people, what does your army want? What does your community, which is your sphere of influence, what do they want? They want grace. And grace is an acronym. The G is for generosity. They want to be generous. They want a generous leader. They want generosity to be one of your values. They want to help. They want to be helped. They want to, as a culture, they want you to be generous to the outside world, to strangers and to people that you don't know. Give first and give back. And then R is recognition, right? They want recognition. People want recognition. They want to be recognized for their efforts. They want to be recognized for their results. they want to be recognized as human beings. And then the A is appreciation. And the appreciation is such a key is like, you can get more, you can increase your authority and influence more through appreciation than maybe anything else, right? Appreciate others. What you appreciate appreciates. And the C is community. And they want to belong to something special. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And then the E, and this is what I learned from you, the discovery process, and recruit select. And that's where I want to go next, is they want to be part of something exclusive, Pat.
Right.
Exclusivity. So generosity, recognition, appreciation, community, and exclusivity. And the thing that I was so happy when my first buyer's agent joined my team, I was just like, what the heck are they thinking? Like somebody actually wants to work with me. This is crazy. And that's what a lot of people, especially in the real estate world, get, is they just bring on anybody who's interested.
Right.
And it turns into baby birds and flock of seagulls and a lot of tough times. But I will tell you that when we implemented the discovery process, we implemented having it was, once we made it really hard to work with us, we got better people, Pat. I mean, is that
I'm
just
shocked.
like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
but at the end, they were like, oh my gosh, I've been hired by Sprint. I've been hired by Hallmark, and their interview process was not as thorough as yours. And I'm like, okay, how's that make you feel? And they're like, I feel awesome. I made it through. I won. I feel like I won something by working. So let's go into recruiting. Let's go into maybe the process, or, I mean, recruiting is hard, right? Yeah. So, and maybe that's just an affirmation that I need to get over, but recruiting is easy. Everybody wants to work for me, and I attract great people at all times.
There you go. I love it. I love it.
Talent comes easily and often to me, or something better. So talk to us about like recruit select. What's the foundation of that, and why does it work?
So first of all, recruit select, train, manage, motivate was a system that was designed by a gentleman out of Charlottesville, Virginia, that I'm in business with by the name of Bain Hennion in Corporate Consulting. And this model has been used for a number of years to grow companies. In fact, it was used inside of Keller Williams for a number of years to help KW grow from the number 4 company in the real estate space to number 1. And it's a model where there's 3 parts. The first part is recruit select. We're going to seek out the best talent possible. We're going to take them through a pretty rigorous process where we're both going to determine if we're a match for each other. And I'm going to come back to that in a second, because that's the start of the challenges for many. Then the action training, which is the T, is that first 90 days. In fact, most people hire people and then they let them go. And we have this conversation internally, and when we teach and coach consultants, it's the kite string analogy. Mm-hmm. When you fly a kite, you don't let all the kite string out right away. And that's what most people do when they hire somebody. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, I've got a role to fill. If I don't fill it, it's my role. Well, now I fill it, and I'm like, okay, good, it's your role. And then we move on. And again, it doesn't positively impact performance. It doesn't impact morale at a high level. And then the last thing is, now that you've hired a great talent and then you've worked with them with that first 90 days to lay the foundation, to empower them, now beyond that 90 days, how do we manage, lead, motivate them to the highest level so that they don't want to ever leave us? Mm-hmm. There's a saying that we have, there's never a shortage of opportunities, only a shortage of talent. Mm. And so when you can have this mindset that I'm in always a mode for looking for talent, I don't know what role I'll have for them, I know that I can create a role for them. When you're always in that type of mindset, the opportunities are huge. And so that's the 3 parts of our model. And the challenge that people have, Michael, first is they're not always on a talent search. Mm-hmm. And see, for example, you think about right now the real estate agents, because that's a big world that you live in, and I've lived in for a long time. Yeah, we're reaching out to past clients, and we have 30% of the United States is unemployed. Mm. Well, when we're reaching out, doing those care calls and those, contribution calls, if you may, What a great opportunity to say, hey, I don't know if you've ever considered real estate. It's been great to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are interested, boy, I'd love to take you through a process. And here's the key in Recruit Select, even if that process doesn't lead to them joining you, when you fully take somebody through that process the right way, you'll change their life because they'll be exposed to something for their core behavior, who they are, and their track record of success. And it'll probably explain some things in their life. Whether they ever join you or not, they'll never forget that process. In fact, I was talking with somebody the other day, and she called me out of the blue, and she wanted to check and see how I was doing. I haven't talked to her in probably 5 years. And she said, I just want to acknowledge to you, you may not remember this. She says, however, you took me through the beginning parts of Recruit Select, and you shared things with me that I had never understood about who I was or why some of the things happened in my life. And I just want you to know that conversation changed my life. Never got into business with her, and yet the conversation changed her life. So
I love that. It does the Recruit Select process have to be one-on-one?
It's a great question, and the answer is yes, and let me tell you why. It's about, remember, this is about building that relationship with the person that you're going to be working side by side with.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have it with more than one person, the challenge is that individual who you're bringing on, they don't know who they're reporting to. They don't know what that direct relationship is. Now, can you do parts of the process and then flip it over to the person who's ultimately going to do it? Absolutely. It's just both parties have to be highly trained on the process. Otherwise, it won't work right. It won't be able to flip it over.
So you're saying that to build the relationship at the highest level, it needs to be one-on-one.
Well, here's the thing, Michael. If I know who you are, and I know how you tick, and I know what drives you, and I know your behavior, I get to have and help you in that relationship to such a high level.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what that also does is that also allows me to get better in everybody I'm dealing with. So yeah, it has to be, remember, we always want to know who we report to.
Right.
And if we don't know who we actually report to, that becomes an internal conflict in our performance, our job performance.
Yeah, and that was a little bit of a selfish question, right? Because I want to refer to the 7 levels of communication. That the highest level is one-on-one for a reason, is because people are going to disclose to you, people are going to say things to you, things that they would never even come up with or say or disclose in a 1-on-2 environment. If there was just one other person in the room that you would not, I mean, there will be tears during Recruit Select, the discovery process. I've discovered is that, they do examine themselves and they get an awareness about themselves that maybe they never had before,
Well, frankly, Michael, nobody's ever taken them through a process like this.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Well, it is. And what's also interesting is this isn't only about business. And this is about life.
Mm-hmm.
If you understand who your core behavior is, and, there's a lot of different perspectives on behavior and personality. I'll give you my opinion. It's just my opinion from all the years and the studying and research that I've done. My personality is different than my core behavior. I can flex my personality for a short period of time. However, I really can't flex my core behavior for a long period of time without exhausting me. Right. So when you can actually determine somebody's core behavior, we call it the zone. If you think about a sports athlete and they say, well, I was in the zone and I went out and I scored 60 points. I was in the zone. Everything was falling. The basket was huge. That's the zone. Well, when you put a person in their behavioral zone, they're able to perform that job at such a high level with very little friction. Mm-hmm. That it gives them such huge job satisfaction. That doesn't mean they can't perform other things. Mm-hmm. Just for me, I was going to college thinking I was going to be an accountant. And what I quickly discovered was I love numbers. I understand financials. I eat it up. However, I couldn't sit behind a desk all day for the rest of my life doing accounting. And that's because of my core behavior, who I am. Mm-hmm. So there's a difference in when you understand it, you literally can free people up. You just truly, you get to see them light up.
So what are the pieces of the Recruit Select part? What are the different phases within recruiting someone? And you don't necessarily have to to give us proprietary information necessarily, but it's like, you know, I have somebody that I have in mind, a talent that I think would be great for Referco.
Right.
What do I do first? Now there is a great relationship there, but they exist in somebody else's community right now as an employee. So, you know, what's the next steps of that?
So the first thing I would coach you, Michael, personally, and anybody listening, is we can't get attached to the outcome, and that's part of the problem. We all have bias going into it. In fact, you said it, you might not realize it, your brain hears it though, is I think they'd be great for Referco.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't even know who they are. We don't even know what their core behavior is. We don't even know what role they might fill.
Yeah.
That bias becomes very internal subconsciously when we're going through the process.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I would say is to folks is don't even think about what role they are. Yeah. Just look at them as an individual that you want to build a relationship with to determine could they be a match somewhere in your organization? Because at this point, we don't even know what type of behavior they have.
Yeah, we don't have a role for them either yet. But
well,
what you're telling me, which is awesome, is focus on the relationship, not the role.
Shocking. Yeah.
Maybe I should do that.
But focus on finding out who they are, where they want to go, what makes them tick, what maybe they're being fulfilled in right now, what they're not being fulfilled in. And see, when you start building that relationship, Recruit Select is really it's like a dating process.
Yeah.
We're going to get to the end of the dating process, and either we're going to feel like we're a great match, we're going to feel like we're not a great match, or we're going to feel like we could be a great match. We don't have a role today. However, now I can go, hey, I've got an opportunity for Bob. Bob is incredibly talented. Yeah. And so the bias is what comes into the process. We typically fill out a need. We do it way too quick. We also don't have enough candidates. Mm-hmm. And so I always tell people over the years, in the beginning of the process, I want you to picture the conference room when you hire the wrong person, when you rush to hire the person to fill out a need. Mm-hmm. I want you to picture the conference room where you have to get out of relationship with them because they're not self-discovering, they're not the right person for the role.
Right.
And you have to fire them. Mm. And I want you to picture that conversation before you hire them, knowing that you knew in the beginning they weren't the right person and it was more about you than it was about them. And it really changes the dynamic of how we hire people. And for most people, they're not willing to pay the price. See, you pay the price now to hire great talent, and down the road, you get the leverage and the compound effect. You don't pay the price right now, you're going to pay the price down the road to have to replace them, and then all the things that have happened as part of that process.
It's just like training, right? With training, it's like if you don't train them now, you'll have to manage them forever.
Right.
If you train them now, you'll never have to manage them. I mean, so put your time in now. You know, it kind of goes to hire slow. It also goes into train slow. You know, so hire slow, fire fast, that kind of thing.
Well, here's the other thing, Michael. Recruiting is a nonstop deal.
Yeah.
So if you're
ABR, right?
Yeah,
always
exactly.
be recruiting.
Exactly. Because again, there's never a shortage of opportunities, only a shortage of talent.
Right.
And the mistakes are made in that first part of the process. If you give me somebody who will follow our models, who will understand the behavior process, and they'll actually pay the price in the beginning, the other two pieces become a lot easier. You hire the wrong person, all the other pieces just are magnified.
Right. Then you're training the wrong person, you're managing the wrong person, you're leading the wrong person, and it doesn't work. Right.
And it's exhausting for you.
Yeah. Well, I always say, and you know, I got to be careful with how I say things, but I'd much rather rein in a Mustang than kick a mule.
Yeah.
Right. And it's one, you know, let's hire Mustangs, and we've got to have some questions. We've got to have some things in process to figure out if they're a Mustang or a mule, right? And now mules are extremely important and helpful, and they can carry the load, right? Carry a lot, but you know, give me a Mustang, and I'd rather rein them in and tweak them than have to drive them, you know? So, well, yeah.
Here's the other last thing I would say about our process is that in addition, if you can define a role, we can define an ideal match. And when you can do that, it doesn't mean that people can't do certain things. However, if my core behavior says I can do this with much more ease and less friction, man, I just got to find that person in that role.
Yeah.
And when you can start scientifically doing that, oh my gosh, it just is amazing. It's actually fun to watch business owners and entrepreneurs when they get this. It's just their eyes light up. It's so much fun.
Well, it's because you're giving them a system. You know, it's just like anything is if you have no system for hiring and recruiting, then it's chaotic. It's
Right.
different every time. If somebody expresses an interest, you say, oh my gosh, I got to say yes, you know, or you're like, oh crap, I really need this because this person just left me, and you hire the first person that can fog a mirror, you know,
Right.
and it's like there's no system to it. When there's a system to it, then all of a sudden it's like there's a calm, there's a peace. You know, system is an acronym. Maybe you didn't know that, but system is an acronym that I made up, which is saving you stress, time, energy, and money. Well, is there any better system to have than a recruiting and hiring system? Because of all the money that you're going to save, all the energy and stress that you're going to save by hiring the right people and not hiring the wrong people. And maybe that's an even bigger, bigger plus than hiring the right people. So, I mean, it's one of those where, what are the phases of recruit select? What are
it's first, we got to hire the right person. We got to do the lead gen to hire to go through the process with multiple candidates.
Yeah.
That's the other piece where many people fail, is they don't have enough candidates, and therefore the cream doesn't rise to the top. If you have 8 to 10 candidates, you'll very quickly see the cream of the crop rise to the top.
Right.
Then once they're hired, the second phase is the action train portion, which is the 90 days after you hire them. And literally that's where, if you think about the analogy of teaching a kid how to ride a bike, it really is, we're going to show them how to ride a bike, and then we're going to ride the bike, and they're going to ride the bike with us holding on to them, and then we're going to watch them ride a bike, and then they're going to do it on their own for a little bit. And it's really just taking them through the process to put them in a position to succeed at a high level. And then once that 90 days is complete, it's really, okay, now, we decided we're going to stay in a relationship with them. We decided that we know really now the big opportunities for them. We've trained them on the basic fundamental skills. We've set the expectations from a empowerment, what are their decision-making abilities, capabilities? How do we want them to interact? When difficult conversations happen, how do you win with me? How do you lose with me? All the things that's going to help us build a strong relationship. And then that third part is beyond that 90 days. It's really building up an incredible employee-employer relationship, partnership, so that they can really excel and grow. And then it's teaching them how to do the same things with the people that they lead. So it's not just about the leader learning this. This is anybody in the organization who's leading others, who's impacting others, who has direct reports. And it's, like I said, it's the closest thing that I've found to a perfect model to hire, lead, motivate, and absolutely inspire people.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, like, what are 2 or 3 things that we can do during the recruiting process that maybe a lot of people leave out that we should put in? And then I'm going to ask you the same question for action training. What are 2 or 3 things that we could do during that phase to maximize that phase? And then the lead and motivate, or lead, manage, and motivate. Like, what are some things that we can do, or what are some things that people maybe forget to do during that phase to maximize? And we'll wrap it up with those 3 if you're okay with that.
That's great.
And then I gotta ask you a question from the high impact questions, right?
Yeah.
So we'll do those 4 things if you're okay. We'll
good.
Up, and you have the greatest download ever that I'm going to tell people about at the end. All right.
So Michael, the first thing in the Recruit Select is that they don't do enough lead gen to develop enough candidates to be able to have a strong enough pool. That's number 1. Number 2, they don't follow the model. They're not willing to pay the price to truly get to know you. And see, if I'm going to hire somebody and I'm going to invest time, energy, and resources, I'm going to put my best clients in front of them at certain points in the process or the transaction or the service. Boy, I got to know that I've got the right person, and not just from a skill level. I've got to understand, who is this person? What is their life journey? What is their story? Where have their successes been? Where have their struggles been? What did they learn from those struggles? What's their trajectory? Are they on the uprise? Or, maybe have they kind of flatlined and they just are looking for an opportunity? And then the last thing is they get too attached to the outcome, so they don't finish the process.
Yeah.
Almost every person I've ever talked to over the years who made a bad hire, they made a bad hire because they didn't follow the model. Yeah. Almost 100% of the time when you go back and analyze it. Yep. And so in Recruit Select, those are the things not to do. And in the Recruit Select, the other thing I would say to help people is you got to be lead generating every day. Every day you're talking, an opportunity to talk with people. In the Recruit Select isn't just about taking somebody through the process to hire them. You actually can change their life. That's right. If you want to really, really help people to understand who they are, because nobody's ever done this, by the way, with them. No one has ever done a behavioral assessment which they've explained their behavior. Mm-hmm. When you do that with somebody goes, oh, wow, now I understand why this, and this happened. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, boom, it changes their whole world.
So what are 2 or 3 questions we could ask during that recruiting process that are questions that maybe people don't ask? In fact, they probably don't ask any of these questions, but what are 2 or 3 questions that help us during the recruiting process that are maybe questions that a lot of people leave out?
So in the life story, we'll ask them about what's their trajectory, like what's happened in their life. And so a great question is, so tell me what happened that caused that to happen. Mm-hmm. There's always a cause and effect of something to happen. And I would say this, Michael, it really is about listening. Sometimes it's not about what they say, it's what they didn't say. It's about what they left out. It's about the emotion when you're asking the questions and you're watching their responses, because Recruit Select is done, face-to-face, or in today's world, done digitally, like over in Zoom. And yet, when you're really in tune with people and you're watching them, there's things there that they don't say or left them unsaid, or even just how they say them, that you pull out additional information. And you're right, I'd say about 70 to 80% of the time, when I take somebody through the entire process of RS, they're crying at some point in that process, because it's that emotional, it goes that deep, so that we can truly understand who that person is.
So there's a saying on that part of the process where it's like there's no predictor of success like a history of success. Is that true?
Yes, and here's what I would say. Environment has a lot to do with success. So you might have somebody who hasn't been in the right environment, hasn't been around the right leaders, hasn't been grown, and because you haven't seen that trajectory, you haven't seen that success. Where you get them in the right environment with the right leader and the right people who are willing to pour into them, and it totally changes them. So that's a fairly accurate statement. Yet just understand, environment is also very, very important.
Yeah, so that's goes back to sports, where it's the quote unquote change of scenery. Sometimes, a player will be not doing very well at one place, he goes to another place and he succeeds at a high level because he needed a change of scenery, he needed a new challenge, and he needed new leadership or a new management or new environment. So I love that. In action training, what's a couple of mistakes that people typically make during the training phase, the 90-day phase? One is they don't show up for it, right?
Yeah, they in other words, here's your manual, now go succeed.
Yeah.
And so they don't actually train them how to do it right. And so therefore the person then does it the way that they believe it needs to be done, or entrepreneurially. That process in the beginning, if you think about a 90-day window, the first week, if that person direct reports to you, you're probably spending 4 or 5 hours with them a day.
Yeah.
And people go, what? Well, here's the thing. You invest in them now to do it the right way, or you're going to have to pay the price and reinvest in them because they're not doing it the right way down the road. And it's just that simple. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is people go, well, I'll just let them create their own opportunity. Yeah, that usually doesn't work, because they have no premise or no perspective on the business.
Yeah.
And so those are the 2 big things that people just aren't willing to pay the price.
Yeah. So how about under lead manage and motivate and inspire? What are a couple of things that they mess up with that?
You know what? It's funny. It's going to come back to the same thing. So we get beyond the 90 days, they're succeeding. Now the leader's on to the next project. and see if you really want to grow people. It goes back to the dream manager that you were talking about. Where do they see themselves 1, 2, 3, 5 years from now? Where do they see themselves in the organization? What opportunities could we create for them so that they never want to leave? And then it's that building the relationship. Remember, they don't leave the company, they leave the leader. And what happens is when that farther and farther that the relationship gets away. Now keep in mind, people are going to report to different people along the way. Yeah. And that's why it's so critical that all the leaders, managers, in some people's worlds, they call themselves managers. I like leaders. Yeah. That the leaders are all trained on this model, and they're all operating under the same premise on the model.
Love that. Talk about a hour of value, right? I mean, just this has been a very powerful, nearly hour, 50 minutes that 47 minutes we've been talking about things and delivered the goods. And I have to let people know that, hey, listen, he has a great download here. It is the 11 high impact questions that leaders need to be asking. It's a PDF. You can get it at referralspodcast.com. And here's the thing, when you download this, you don't just get this. The thing that we do at Referrals Podcast that's unlike anybody else is that you don't just get the download from this episode, which is like episode 144. You get all 144 downloads from every episode we've ever done. So you can go to referralspodcast.com and check out those amazing resources. This is an amazing resource. Pat Mancuso is an amazing resource. Pat, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to learn more about how they can implement a system for recruiting and hiring, how would they go about doing that?
They could get me on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and we also do one-on-one entrepreneurial and business coaching. And if they have interest in that, they can go to www.coachwithpat.com, and they'll give us some basic information. Then we'll reach out to them.
I love it. Everybody, you got to check that out. Listeners, viewers, thank you so much for being on, and you definitely got to check out Pat's information. You heard, I mean, he scratched the surface today on the depth of knowledge that this guy has. He's full of wisdom and full of a helping heart, which I love. And Pat, any final comments or anything else to add before we let you go?
Well, Michael, you're following and your philosophy, and I so love it. And, I've been a part of it for a long time. It really ties into what we talked about today. When you invest in people, that return on investment is significant. And when you can actually empower them to be in a role or a performance opportunity that they enjoy, that they do at a high level, the sky's the limit. And that's what really is really exciting. They say that the true currency is relationships. Right. And that's so true as part of, how you and your listeners and your ambassadors and all the folks in your organization think. And so I want to say thank you so much for having me today. I've been truly blessed and grateful to be able to share, and we've got lots to share. So I love the opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. And, I truly believe that your network is the biggest part of your net worth. Everybody talks about their net worth and they're figuring their net worth and they see their assets but your network is the biggest part of your net worth. And, it is always be connecting, always be contributing, always be community-ing. And it's one of those where this is such a huge part of it that I will tell you that I took parts of the system and employed them at the consumer level to build relationships, So it's one of those where it is amazing how what you're doing not just ties to building your business, but building your army of ambassadors. And that's what I love about it is really, it's just ultimate relationship building.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, that's really what you're talking about. I talk about at a very kind of superficial level about, handwritten notes and phone calls and events and seminars and one-on-ones and this high level helicopter level. What you've really done is encapsulated and systematized the one-on-one piece of the 7 levels of communication. I mean, the best of the best at building that one really powerful relationship. So I think there's a ton of synergies there. And like you said, it's amazing how well they go together, because it is based on love, generosity, and appreciation. And so thank you so much. I wish we had another hour. We could have this conversation. We could, pop open a beer or something else and just like kick back. But I just really, we'll have you back. We have to have you back. I'd love to dive deeper into the action training and the leadership, motivate, and inspire part of this, because there's a lot more depth in all three of the phases. But I just want to say thank you so much for being our guest today on the Referrals Podcast.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Referrals Podcast. Go to referralspodcast.com. Check it out. Here's the other thing is rate, review us, share this. If you like today's content, please subscribe if you enjoyed it. The bottom line is we come out every week, but we do have some surprises for you coming up in the next few months that only are for our subscribers, are only for those who rated and reviewed our show. So if you're going to get in on that, you got to make sure you get in on this now. So we appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. Bottom line, we will see you next time on the Referrals Podcast. Thank you, everybody.